the Libby Trustees, that's the Board of Selectmen. We're here to discuss the issues with this back wall in particular. So, if anybody has anything to bring up, we have some copies of the friends of Libby friends.
Could we do quick introductions? Could we do quick introductions?
Sure.
And affiliations?
I'm Dave Senecal, I'm the chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
Rick Geddes with Geddes Building Movers.
Sam Bogle, Public King.
Howard Lowe with the Heritage Commission.
Happy Dragonfly with the Heritage Commission. Linda Murray, the Select Board member.
Ryan, Select Board.
Dave Bolduc, Heritage Commission.
Maggie Steer, Heritage Commission, and New Hampshire Preservation Alliance.
Suzanne Ryan, taxpayer.
Brian DeShays, Select Board member and representative from the Select Board to the Heritage Commission.
Jim Pinio, Town Manager. With everybody. Amy is here recording minutes. After the last board meeting, there was a question regarding the contract with Volvo Engineering. I reached out to Matt, we had a conversation. He was able to answer a lot of the questions I had. We felt it was prudent from that point to have a meeting on site with Volvo Engineering and Geddes Building Movers to get a better understanding of the scope of work and how the process going forward would happen. It's my understanding, Matt, in speaking with you to clarify one of the issues, in New Hampshire, everybody is a civil engineer, and then there's disciplines within the engineering, and you are qualified as a structural engineer, correct?
Structural is my focus, subset under civil. There are licensed structural engineers, but to put structural on your license, you have to take a different exam.
But it is within your discipline.
It is within my area of competence, which is allowed in the state.
So, you kind of explained to me the way I understood it, the scope of work was you would work with Geddes Building Movers and come in and identify places to be able to open up, and Geddes Building Movers would from that point identify the best way to do the repairs to the columns on the north wall, which is this wall, and from that point they would send that information to you. You would qualify it so that it is able to hold the load, and you would make the recommendations as to the connection points and what is to be done, stamp it, and then Geddes would go ahead and do that work. Is that what I understood?
Close. The Geddes is going to be spearheading the actual lifting and supporting of the structure. Right? Once we can say confidently that the load has been removed from these failing columns, I'm going to analyze and design members to replace these columns. They're not going to be repaired, they'll need to be replaced. And then the connections, the associated connections of those columns to the foundation and the carrying beam above, any reinforcement that happens to the carrying beam above, and how it interfaces with the existing tower. That will be able to support the loads this wall sees. But that's the limit of the scope, really, is the repair of this wall, this back wall.
And that engineering fee for that scope of work was $12,500. Was that correct?
In my in my proposal, it was $5,500.
Okay. And then we don't have an idea at this point what the actual work is going to be from Geddes, correct?
We don't know the final product because I haven't done any design with it yet. I have an idea of that approach.
Needs to have an idea on if we're going to spend this money for the engineering, what's the cost of the physical work going to be?
So the plan that I had when I met with Dave was, and the way I was approaching this project was this back wall is what I would consider, and I think Matt would, in failure. As you can see, these columns. So in order to continue going on to, I'll turn it off completely here. Should just not run it. To get on to another day, these columns are in failure at this point. And if these collapse, it's gone. So the most urgent item to address was this back wall. And I've been looking at this project for many years also, with all kinds of different, ways to repair it. But at this point, the major issue is this wall that we're basically looking at. So what my feeling was that we would have Matt, number one, just check the foundation. That would be the first phase. And that would be included in his 5,500, was that we would do an inspection on the foundation to make sure that we were secure on this back wall that's here. If he says yes, the foundation is fine, which we haven't looked at yet, we would open up some holes with Dave, and we would do that, and Matt would make that decision that yes, the wall itself is structurally sound. At that point, we would then devise a method whereby we would come up with a shoring method to replace these columns, perhaps 2 columns and 2 columns and 2 columns. And we would then work with a contractor that would do the actual carpentry part. So we would shore it so the posts could get removed, put in new posts. Well, first off, the windows would come out, and then we would go through and do the shoring, remove 2 posts, put 2 in, or however, we would design that with Matt.
That was
How we were going to do it. Yes.
To do it in sequence.
Yes, we would do it in sequence, so that on this wall you would have all new columns. It would get closed in, the windows would go back. We would get a number to you before we got to any further from the 5,000. So we would come with a proposal on cost for shoring and carpentry to do that project. But before you spend any money for that part, Matt would be the one to say, yes, the foundation is okay, and we would come up with a plan, open it, look at it, and decide how to do it and get numbers to do all of that work. So that was what I saw as a process for this.
I'm sure that board members have questions.
Do you have an estimate on about what range we're looking for that work that you're planning to do? Are we looking at 10,000, are we looking at 20, are we looking at 30, or do you not even come close?
It's not going to be 10 or 20. They're going to be in the hundreds, but not 10 or 20. But it's not going to be $1 million.
Yeah, that's
So-
usually my range. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
yes.
So as you're doing this wall, you were saying you'd be pulling these windows out. Is the entire rear facade in play here?
I think we would have to look at it. We were discussing that 10 minutes ago, looking at the prints and seeing where we have to open it up.
Possible?
And we would get to that. Yeah, it's possible. I would try and stay away from as much of the trim as we could.
Sure.
Maybe just the trim going up to the blocks. We need to get up into that 6x6 that's there.
Excuse me.
And that's never been opened up on this backside yet, so.
And the notion of the windows, are those windows coming out and getting replaced, or are they coming out and getting returned?
I think our goal is to keep them, and I'm sure that's what the Heritage Commission would like, to keep as much as we can. So,
Why?
speaking with Dave,
Why?
I think that's just in historical preservation. You try and maintain as much as you can.
If it's serviceable, absolutely. Or replicate if you can.
Replicate if you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would work with the board with numbers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if these are what they are exactly for windows.
Single thing.
Just single
They're
thing.
old.
Right.
And is, and.
Doesn't make them bad.
No, but they're old.
And is there a consideration going to be given to mitigating if there's any lead on this building?
We would deal with that with a contractor.
Okay. Asbestos, lead, all that kind of stuff. If there's any, you have to mitigate it. Is that right?
We've done some work, and Dave has with Frank LeMay Milestone Construction.
Sure.
that's his expertise.
Okay.
I mean, so that would be one of the next steps.
Got it.
Would be meeting with someone like Frank that knows those types of details.
Yeah.
And how it he has a demo person that handles exactly what you're discussing.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So,
And just to follow up on the comment, if the windows are to be saved, who's going to, or whatever the right term, restore them? Who's going to do that?
I think those are answers that will be way down the board, right? Just remind
Well, I'm
everybody.
just trying to understand
No, I
what the costs are
understand, but I
way
don't
down
think we
the
have
board.
answers for that, because we haven't assigned.
I just want to understand what we might be looking at for
Sure.
costs way down the board.
So to me, what you're following is standard protocol. Whenever you rip into an old building, this is what you do. This is not, you're not reinventing the wheel here.
That's correct.
You look at the foundation, you look at the walls, you pull apart, you see what you have, you go to repair 5 things, and sometimes it's 5 and sometimes it's 25 things that you have to repair, and it's just a work in progress. That's the way it goes. That's
Keep
what
an open
happens
mind as
with,
to what we need to repair.
yeah, that's, I mean, this is general protocol when you go into any old building and do this. Am I wrong, or?
I think you're right. I think,
It's exactly the approach.
yeah.
Even my proposal was broken down into 2
Correct.
tasks. Task 1, the first task was exploratory understanding of the structure as it sits, and get a grasp of how to go about the fix.
Just to
And then the number I put to the task 2 is just based on what I've done previously that's worked, what I've seen that's worked.
just to remind everybody, this
Anticipate.
$5,500 that the board approved, but we're digging into a little bit more, is no different than the $16,000 quote that you guys got from the last engineering firm.
Yep.
All the, help me with the name, who,
Turner,
Turner.
H.L. Turner.
Turner
Yes.
gave you guys a proposal for $16,000 to come up with a plan to brace the building. So that's the first step. I think we have a team right here that can do the job as well, if not better, for significantly less money.
So what's gonna happen to the collection when this goes on? Because now we've got windows open and out. Do we have a plan for where the collection, or how we're gonna cover it, or where we're gonna put it?
We were gonna, to save $160,000 of moving collection, we were going to gather a team, again, part of phase 2, which would be the next set of contractors who are coming in to do initial demo. They would be responsible, or the collection would all be pushed to the front of the building. And then a barrier wall would be erected
Okay.
to avoid dust and contamination, just to isolate the workspace from the rest of the collection. That's been the plan, and
Yeah, that was explained at the
This is
last
being on
meeting.
television. I just wanted
Yep,
people
most
to
definitely.
read here,
Yep.
because one of the questions are going to be, then what are you gonna do with the collections?
correct.
Thank you.
We're moving it out of the way rather than spending almost $200,000 to get it off-site.
How's it gonna be cleaned?
No,
It's
we're not
covered right
doing it
now.
at this point. We're just
Well, I
moving it.
know, but in the long run, because all that stuff, you open it up, it's gonna just spin, that mold is just gonna go everywhere and just get the collection worse.
I gotta start with phase 1. I can't plan on cleaning stuff. Anyway, it's
So
not me to begin
what
with.
I hear is we have a pinpointed approach right now. We're doing, finding out what the foundation is, finding out what the walls is. Before they start doing any demo, he just said they're gonna put a barrier wall up and put the collection forward. Let me finish. So that means that the collection will then be cordoned off from any demo and work that they do. So they're not gonna have spillage and junk and stuff that goes on the collection. The collection right now is all covered with tarps inside the building to allow as little contamination on it as possible. So there'll be a barrier wall and it will be covered. We have to start with point A and work to point B and work to point C, or we do nothing.
I don't
We
think
can't just do everything all at once. We don't know what we're doing, and it's going to take incremental steps.
I don't think there's any question, but I think the public would want to know that we have a plan to protect while we do whatever we're doing in here in the back.
It's great to have it on public notice.
And then here's our step 1. I have no problem, but I think that was the reason I asked the question.
Thank you, Linda.
So if I understood what you said correctly, Mr. Gaddis, once Vogel Engineering comes up with a plan based on what your recommendations are, you'll work in conjunction with a carpenter to you stabilize and then do the carpentry work. So that tells me that we need to have another contractor on board as well, being a carpenter, or is that something that falls within your organization?
No, we would most likely bring on, and that would be up to the committee. I mean, we do an awful lot with Milestone. Frank is familiar with this project. I know people said they knew Frank. He's involved in a lot of historical restorations. He's been around for a long time. And he has all those people at his disposal, being a GC. He and I have already discussed, he has somebody that their specialty would be removing the glass. He would bring a glass company in just to do that. So they would remove it, store it, and preserve it. And then you people, and we could give it to you two different ways when we get to that point. It would be, we remove it, preserve it, and put it back in. Or if you said, we would like to do an upgrade into a double pane or whatever, and that's not my expertise. Frank is very familiar with the preservation process as to what would meet their requirements or desires and fit yours also. So Frank is just somebody that I would put out there that knows all of those. When it comes to the demo, he has people at his disposal for that. He has people that handle just the lead. That's what he does day to day. So our real specialty is the shoring process. I ended up here with Dave just because Dave and I are old friends. We brought up together, and Matt is here because Matt works with us now. As far as our structural expert, we're doing a lot like in Hampton Beach, and everything has to be standard. So we use Matt for that. So we just have a relationship that goes back. We have that same relationship with Frank LeMay. So it's just an easy one that everybody works together. And Frank covers an awful lot of bases that would be covered in that sort of thing. And Matt's opinion was that we're going to rebuild everything on the entire wall, would be completely reframed. So as far as like digging into things, once we start, I think we would plan, and correctly, Matt, this would get removed. We would reframe it with all new lumber. So everything from here up would be new, except for the glass if that goes back in. But everything from here to as far as we can save, and we would determine that when we get you numbers, what we feel we can save. But all of this would get replaced, all new, no, not reusing a column, even if it looks good. You're going to get a brand new column that's going to last after that.
Just to be clear, Rick, when you're saying we're going to, you're really talking about
The group.
a third party.
The team.
Yes, the team.
Okay. You are the shorer.
Correct. Yes.
Everybody will understand
Yes.
that. You are doing the shoring.
Yes. The team is going to, as a team, replace everything. Matt's the design, we're holding it, and they would do the demo and the rebuilding of it as it gets
That's the
done.
number we can't get to till Matt's done his.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard putting a number to something when you don't know what's required.
Yes.
I have a question. So you're gonna be bringing equipment in here to shore the wall.
Yes.
Any questions about access or any of that stuff that you need to worry about?
No, we would do a post type shoring. In other words, we wouldn't bring heavy
You're
equipment
not
in.
bringing big stuff in?
No, nothing of that sort. It would be all done. I would call it handwork, so to speak.
Yeah.
It would be all that sort of thing. Things that would be done manually.
Mr. Geddes, how many years have you been doing this?
Too many. Almost 60 years.
Are you first or second generation?
I started working as a kid in a mobile home company.
Yeah.
So first generation for mine.
Okay.
I started mine as about 4
How many
years.
projects have you done in 60 years?
Thousands.
Okay, thank you.
We keep 25 or so going. We have anyone that, as far as us, I could give some cards out if you'd like. We have a Facebook page on things that we do regularly.
So this isn't your first rodeo.
No. We do an awful lot of historical work.
I'd just like to say I was present when you moved the Epsom Meeting House,
Yes.
complete with steeple
Yes.
and stained glass windows,
Yes.
put it on a new foundation. It ended up intact. I was also present in Belmont when you moved the huge 3-story Belmont School, had to build a special access road, get it down a very steep hill to its new location.
Yes.
No problems.
Those are tough ones. This is a pretty simple. this is not a complicated project per se. We just have to figure out exactly how to do it because you can't see anything here. If it was a standard build, we go underneath and start. This is a little bit different, but is it out of the realm? I mean, I don't see that at all. And my goal with Dave was to not have you people spend $3 million at this point, but be able to preserve the building. I believe it or not, I used to come here as a kid. We used to live in Barnstead on Half Moon Lake, and every summer we would take several trips to the Libby Museum. And I still remember there was an elephant's foot in there. And things. I still remember that from when I was a kid coming here. So that's one of the reasons I would hate to see it not preserved. And I think it's worth doing. Like all building, it's been around for 100 years. So it's like any of us that have a few years on us, right? We tweak and we bend a little bit, but if you take care of them, you can save them. And that's what
So,
we're looking.
so that's a little off topic, but several people have raised the question, well, just put a new foundation on it. Could you explain to everybody the difficulty of lifting this up to put a new foundation on it, given that we have a stem wall?
Yeah, so the problem is here, it's not built as a single unit. The average house starts with a foundation, then a wooden floor, walls on the floor, roof goes on the walls. Here you have a foundation with the wooden floor the walls are not on the wooden floor. They built the foundation up, so the floor is tied into the foundation, not into the walls. So in order to pick this building, we would have to shore from the floor on the inside all the way up to the roof. Remove all of that, pick it up, and then rebuild. Everything would then get rebuilt. So that's why I believe that this foundation is not all that bad, which I would want Matt, that was the 5,000, was for Matt to say, yes, this foundation I think is solid enough. It looks it to me and it looks it to Dave, but we would do a little bit more exploring for that. And at no charge for us doing our part. Matt would be the guy to be able to put the stamp and say, foundation looks fine, we can get away with rebuilding this wall. Are there some other issues with this building? There are, but if this doesn't get fixed, my opinion is that in 12 months you won't have a building here anymore.
The problem is these are already in a state of failure. So if this gets loaded up with an atypical snowstorm, you're gonna have progressive collapse.
I think that's what the
Everything's
predecessor
gonna be
said.
buried.
too.
So
That's what Turner said.
I don't think anybody's.
So I have a
I'm
question,
not saying
Matt.
anything new that
Yeah.
hasn't been in any of the reports.
Is your assessment gonna be the foundation all around the building or just this foundation wall?
I was
here?
limiting my scope to this rear wall. When this was proposed to me, the work was reinforcing and repairing
Yeah.
this wall to prevent collapse, with the goal of keeping it standing.
So just, how do we get into this? I'm just wondering, if we get into this and you say this wall is okay, is it possible later on we could find that the other three walls are not okay?
It's possible. I
Okay.
can't say with any certainty now that they aren't. It's the same construction.
Yeah. But you'll have an opportunity to take a look at that when you open this thing up. You'll be able to look through the structure?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And in 2019, Alba based their entire $2.5 million expansion on keeping this foundation. So at least in 2019, Alba was satisfied with the condition
Yeah.
of the entire foundation.
My only point here is, I wanna make sure, if we get a look, we're gonna get a look-see of what's going on inside this structure. If you see anything that looks a little funky, you'll let us know, right?
That's why I'm here.
Okay, I mean, on the other three walls.
I've done a visual with Dave at the other wall.
Okay.
And you can share your comment.
Yes, and I feel pretty comfortable with the other walls,
Okay,
having looked at them. You have cracks, but at 100 years old, they all have a crack here and there.
right,
If the crack that we all see that's there, if I could stick my hand in there,
that would be a
we
problem.
wouldn't be having this meeting, because I would have said to Dave, we're into a full replacement here. I don't, from what I have looked at, and I've been looking at them for 40 years, I don't see that happening. I see what basically happening is a building that wasn't built 100% by engineering specs and has moved out some, so on and so forth. Matt is thought of that, but this is the major part. I don't think your foundation is the major issue.
Okay,
And I did a laser shot, at least this north wall, and deviates by no more than half an inch. High point in terms of levelness. top of the wall. Top of the wall.
Well, there are laser measurements that was done by predecessors, and
That was on these outside.
That was on the.
yeah.
He said
Okay.
that.
No,
He's talking the foundation level.
I'm just trying to clarify with Jim. Is that okay? Those are on the wall.
Yeah,
Have those
I
changed?
think there were 3 points on the wall that
Yeah.
they took in 2015, 2016, and
Yeah.
2019. I think were the
So that
dates.
would confirm it is what you guys already know. Is this thing is the deep stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Try to get in. Go ahead.
Right. After you put the wood up,
Yeah.
are you gonna put this cement back?
We would look at.
I mean,
But with
we
the,
can make
from,
that's
from
a
the
piece of
heritage,
plan.
the heritage, I mean, again, it all goes back to what the select board agrees to do. But my investment in this project is to maintain the look of this building as best we can. So I would be advocating for a new stucco cement finish. But certainly I would like to replicate the look of this building as much as we can.
Understanding, where's Maggie? Maggie! Understanding it's the back of the building, is it as important to make it look exact as it was, or for it to be as structurally sound for 100 years as possible? Or both?
I can't answer that question, Brian, right now. Interpreting the Secretary of the Interior standards is a pretty fluid process, and generally back walls are less important than what's visible from the street. But these are decisions that have to be made when we're looking at cost estimates and a whole lot of other factors. But Dave's right.
Yeah.
You know, maintaining the appearance of the
Correct.
building and its historic integrity is important.
Correct.
These are not high-level finishes. This is cement board.
Right.
With all the, it's a fine board. I mean, if we were doing murals and
I think Dave's right. These dentals, if you can, those look like they're period. Everything else looks,
Well, the
you
big
could
take,
replicate.
the big takeaway I take from
Oh,
Maggie's
leaving the
statement
door.
is back walls aren't as critical, good word, thank you, Suzanne, as the front appearance of the building.
But again,
But we do want to
this is
keep
not
it.
a complicated back
Correct.
wall, as Dave said. Replicating this back wall is not a big deal. Why would you change it?
Only if the structural engineer said that there was a reason to change it.
put in some flying buttresses just to make sure nothing
Yeah.
goes.
Something.
You joke, that would be highly offensive.
So that's what I'm saying. It could have to have some slight changes.
If you're open to that, it would help.
Let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
Dave's right. These aren't high-end finishes. I'm sure you could replicate.
I have the, sorry.
So if we got to that point, would Milestone Engineering?
Yes.
Construction.
Construction.
Would they be a subcontractor for you, or would they be a subcontractor for the town?
I think they'd be a subcontractor for the town. They're much bigger than we are. We're little peanuts. They're big.
Monolith.
If the town wanted everybody to be under one, we could all go under Milestone perhaps. Frank takes on those kind of a project. It does that. But we could do it any which way. I don't have a problem being a sub to the town of Wolfeboro and doing this, whatever works best.
Okay.
I have a
Building is
question
open
about
if anybody wants to reach
timeframe.
in. You need to see the inside.
Time frame?
Yeah.
I don't know if we have one at the moment. I guess the first thing would be if the 5,500 and you say go forward, and Dave and Matt and I will get a schedule together. I'm thinking within the month to just go in and look at the foundation. Do an inspection that Matt would then do his report on to say this is the next step. I think we're good there. Let's go on to the next one.
Rick has proposed inspecting the foundation from the inside, which means removing the plaster and lath wall and some non-bearing framework,
Yes.
as opposed to getting in an excavator and
Yes.
opening it up from the outside.
Yeah. I think we
You
do.
get the same data either way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he gets the plan done and says, okay, everything's fine. Then we have a contract with you to shore it up. And how long do you think if he gives you a plan, it would take you to?
We would get together, us and Milestone, or however you want to work that. And I don't, would we be going through Jim as a point person?
Yeah.
So we would sit down together, say, this is our next step. And we would then put together the numbers. And I think we need to have everything done by this fall. It has to be done.
The reason I'm asking
Yes.
you that is that we need to get a plan to the Attorney General's office. Because they have asked us as to feed into the whole. So I'm trying to get a sequence that we are going to have to put a plan and a sequence together.
I would think we could have a plan together perhaps in 40 to 60 days.
So you proposed a 90-day limit.
Yes.
I think Linda makes a point. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in this thing. It would be great at some point to kind of lay out the sequence of events.
Timeframe.
Because it sounds to me like I'm just making this up, but it feels to me that if we said go on the 5,500, we're going. The next step would be somebody's got to go and start preparing the collection to get protected. You know what I mean? There'd be kind of the sequence of events that you want to lay out to make sure you get things done so that we're not in your way, and you're not in our way. You know, that we kind of lay this whole thing out. That would be important.
Well, we'll do some minimal protection when we expose,
No, I got it.
expose the wall.
But, kind of like a calendar that says, 3rd week of June, this should be done. 4th week of June, that should be done. So you have kind of a sequence of events. Yeah, that would be good.
But, yeah,
That way we're not making it up as we go along.
Even though we may not make every time
Right,
frame
and-
on it, but that is our plan and that's our sequence.
Yep.
the big question mark still is, how much is that plan, how much is phase 2 gonna cost? And whether, will the town agree to it?
Well, that
Yeah,
is
right.
there, but if
Right.
we have to put something into the Attorney General's office,
Okay.
then that's what he gets.
Okay.
We're two here, and once we get a quote, we'll see if we can get the money.
Right.
That's where
Once,
we are.
once this has been done and Matt and Rick have their data, if you're agreeable to work with Milestone, he's ready to provide a package price for what the next steps will be. So if you need to see the whole picture, you're not saying you have to use him, but he is a person who has volunteered to put a project cost to the replacement.
I think we're getting lost in the weeds again. I think what we're supposed to be discussing here is phase 1, which is find out if the foundation is good and to make sure that the back wall doesn't collapse.
And we also have this other deadline, which I have an opportunity to speak to two people who can help give me that deadline.
I agree with you, Linda. We're not lost in the weeds. We're trying to figure out how we present information to the Attorney General's office, and we need to understand how to do that.
And then
That's not lost in the weeds.
And we're going to need, as a board, to go back and make that decision.
I don't- I don't
This
think we can make that decision and get something to the Attorney General's office until we do step 1.
I was asking for timeframes on it when we finish with one, what would 2 take?
Yeah.
Looking at some kind of an idea on where we're going to go, because we're going to have to do that.
I would say with a pretty good level of confidence, I would think that if we move forward with phase 1, from that point, Milestone should be able to put together the Gantt chart outlining
Right.
the time frame that they anticipate them to be able to get from point A through to point whatever. And then, of course, it's all going to be contingent on what those costs are and whether or not we've got the amount of funds to execute it.
Correct.
Is that unreasonable to say Milestone should do that?
Yeah, no, that's what he does every day. Yes.
Can you clarify specifically what phase 1 is? Just the foundation, just this busting in to see here, busting in the inside wall? What inclusive is phase 1? I got lost. I keep
Okay.
hearing foundation, but I know it's more than that. Can you clarify specifically what phase 1 is?
I'm concerned there's a disjoint between what I call task 1 on my proposal and what everybody's calling phase 1 now. Task 1 for me, my responsibility, I wanted access provided to the foundation the wall framing and the roof framing, so I can make a determination of how it's constructed and how we can replace and reinforce it. That's my whole task.
That's a 5,500.
No, that's $500.
500. Okay.
That's
So
the
then,
one thing.
what's
And then
the
once
fi-
I have a better grasp on the building, this is the first time I've stood in front of this building. This whole meeting today was just supposed to be me coming in to put eyes on the building, and now I'm on TV. I don't. Anyway, that's my task one.
Okay, 500. Just look at the
500 is
foundation.
just my time to come out here and inspect the building with my
Assess
my
the
expert
foundation.
assess whether the foundation is adequate as it stands with no modification to support the loads that we're looking to support.
Okay.
And I also, to be clear, I need to see how the wall is constructed. I can make educated guesses, but I haven't seen it firsthand. Same thing with the connection to the roof, because if we're putting a new wall in, the connection of the existing roof structure to that wall becomes critical. That's something I need to know.
So that's another step.
That is task one.
That's
That's task one.
$500.
My eyes on what exists.
Okay.
Right now, it's all enclosed. It's encapsulated. It's finished. I just need little investigative areas.
And so
opened
we
up.
don't do anything after that until we get that report.
That would be wonderful.
Yes.
That's task one.
We don't have to open this for you to make that determination.
I need not the whole wall. Previous reporters have seen the structure through these access cavities, where this has been selective demo, just to see the structure. But what hasn't been done is structure of the head joint up here. We have some access because of the entranceway. There's some images in this packet of the structure from that position, but I haven't seen this side.
I'm just curious, if you do pull this apart, if you have to see something, how do we get it covered back up enough for whatever long this is constructed
Plywood.
gonna take?
He's doing it inside. You're doing it inside, right?
Preferably inside.
Yes.
But we will open up these columns. You can see they were opened up recently, I
Yeah.
guess. So we're gonna look at that. I mean, we're not gonna open up any huge holes.
Okay.
Anything we open up, we're gonna be able to put plywood back up.
Okay,
So it's enclosed so the animals don't get in
there you go.
or anything of that sort.
That's
So
the question.
that would happen.
Stating the obvious, the museum is not going to be open this summer.
Actually, not.
Absolutely not. I'm just saying, this is being broadcast on TV. This information needs to be very plain.
So what's the 5,000 for? Step 2.
That was my best guess as to the design time required to come up with a valid design for the replacement of the wall. That's the structural engineering involved with the design of the replacement structure.
So it's no physical work, it's a design
That's
step.
that's my design.
Okay.
My design.
All right, I think that's clarified to me at least, so thank you.
Sure.